Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Victoria here on the west coast of Canada. Welcome Kuldeep. Hi Jainil. Welcome everyone. In this class we are looking at a reading section practice with some feedback, talking about some strategy for that band 9 fluency. This is a members chat class. Of course, everybody is welcome to watch. There's lots of great learning to be had. Welcome, Sammy. And this lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS success. Please visit us there. For the general IELTS, check us out at IELTS help.com. That's generalieltshelp.com. On both of our websites, we have lots and lots of materials to help you practice for your reading as well as the other sections of the exam. I'll quickly show you what that looks like for us here. This is our academic IELTS website with background here. And all you need to do to get all of our materials is click this big red button to join the premium package. We are a British Council IELTS test registration center, and we are certified British Council agents, so check us out. All right, let's get back to point. So if anybody has questions, members, at any time, you can always send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com. There's, of course, writing and speaking help on the websites, and we have our books on Amazon as well, so you can check that out there. All right. And after this class, we will have a task 2 writing class where everybody will be able to join the essay writing. And tomorrow, members, take note of this. We have a Q&A. We have a question and answer session, and that's going to be tomorrow. I usually put it at the end of the week, but this time I put it before because I want to do a speaking part 2 followed by speaking part 3 on Saturday. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's get into some reading. We are working on a passage 3 today, members, so it's a little bit more challenging. Usually the order of the passages in difficulty are 1 to 3, so passage 3 is usually the most challenging. Passage 1 is often easier, but that's not always true. What you should do when you get to your IELTS reading section is you should look at all 3 of the passage titles and pick the one that you feel is going to be the closest to your area of interest and your area of knowledge. On the computer-based exam, that's really easy to do because you can jump from one passage to the other very, very quickly with your navigation key, and it's not too bad in the paper-based exam either. So here, if somebody is into astronomy, then they are going to have an easier time with this passage. So the first step, of course, is looking at the title, and here we have this bright picture here as well. So explosions in space, supernovae, and here we have this interesting looking picture. So based on this title, explosions in space, supernovae, and looking at the picture, what do you think that this passage is going to be about? Your first step should always be reading the title. If there's a picture, look at the picture. In my exam that I did back in February, there were no pictures for any of the passages, but sometimes you do get them, okay? Jainil says, I'm fond of space. All right, that's great, Jainil. So this should be right up your alley, okay? Right up your alley is an idiom meaning that in your area of expertise or knowledge. All right, so explosions in space, look at the picture. What supernovae? Plus the picture. What can I infer about this passage? Okay. Take notice of this word infer. Infer means to make an educated guess. Okay. Sammy says it could be about the galaxy, the Milky Way. Okay, the Milky Way, Sammy, is a nickname for the galaxy or the visible part of the galaxy, right? All right. Okay, explosions in space. What would be an explosion in space? Sammy says maybe the sun, light particles. Okay, that's getting a little bit closer. What can make explosions in space? There's not a lot of different phenomenon that can make explosions. Abhishek says it could be about the stars and planets. Okay. All right. Sure. So we have that much information. Let's see if we can get a bit more. The next step is to look at the questions quickly. Just kind of glance over them. Okay. So here we have some paragraph matching questions. I can almost guarantee that you're going to have at least one set of these questions in your reading passage on your exam, if not two. Okay, this is a very popular type of question in the IELTS exam for a few different reasons, meaning that you have to match information that they give you with the correct paragraph. Okay. The reason this question, members, is so popular on the IELTS exam is that it's really testing your actual reading comprehension, your true reading comprehension skills. So, of course, it's not going to be in the order of the reading. And you really have to have good paraphrasing skills, and you have to read the passage from start to finish in order to really answer these questions. You can't just skim or scan, or you can, but it's going to take you much longer because you have to read and read again and read again and read again, and that's not efficient. It's better just to read once. So that's why this type of question is so popular, because you can't just kind of search for answers. You have to actually understand and answer. Okay? So which paragraph contains the following information? You may use any letter more than once. Now, when you're practicing this at home, you want to paraphrase each of these on paper because that's what they're doing in the IELTS. They're paraphrasing this information. So, mass energy conversion. Okay, so all I would do at home is change this to mass energy conversion, altering or changing large amounts of energy. Okay. Now, what can I do if I don't know another way to say conversion? Or if I don't know the meaning of conversion and I'm at home, I'm studying, I'm like, okay, I know that the right strategy and technique here, especially for practice, is to do paraphrasing. Okay, paraphrasing means to say the same idea using a different word, a synonym, an antonym, or a negative with a negative. So if I don't know the meaning of a word like conversion, what can I do? And you should do this instead of using a dictionary. What can you do? Excuse me. So again, it is very important that you practice paraphrasing questions for the reading section during your practice at home before the IELTS exam. If you do not know another synonym or way to express the word, you should use a what? There's a special kind of tool or book that you can use. Kuldeep says you can break the word. Yep, absolutely. That's one good strategy, Kuldeep, is to break the word into its prefix, root suffix, conversion, right? But again, at home, so that's during the exam, Kuldeep. At home, what should you do? What's that special little book or special little tool? Yeah, there it is. Janelle says use a thesaurus. Sammy, yep, I see it as well. So Sammy says use a thesaurus. Okay, so for students learning another language, in this case, of course, English, as soon as you are at an intermediate level of the language, you should be using a thesaurus and not a dictionary when you want to figure out the meaning of words, okay? It's a much, much better tool, okay? Faster. All right. So again, you would do the same for the rest. So the requirements for a type 1A supernova. So the necessary elements or components for a type 1A supernova. Supernova as intergalactic measuring sticks. So supernova as a measurement tool in the universe. Heavy elements come from supernovae, all right? Heavy elements originate from supernovae. The fuel used for stars, so the energy or the power that's needed by stars. Supernovae are the progenitors of much of existence. Supernovae are the source of much of existence. All right, so again, paraphrasing as much as possible. Now, in the exam, you want to do it nice and quick, like I just did, and in your mind. Okay? All right. So now we have some sentence completion questions. These are fairly popular. In the computer-based exam, it's going to be drag and drop. Okay. So here you basically have to find the correct words from the passage. Always pay attention to the instructions. Here it's write no more than 2 words from the passage for each answer. Okay. Now again, everyone, members, this is a reading class, so make sure that you're reading. Okay. Don't just listen to me, but read. And if you can, read aloud. Okay. Meaning that you actually move your mouth, tongue, hear yourself, your voice. Okay. All right. So number 33. Type 2 supernovae originate from a star which is something. The energy producing process in a star converts something into something. The death process starts when all of the hydrogen is used up. The star then begins to process something elements. All right. Now, again, at home, you want to be paraphrasing these as much as possible. So you want to go step by step. All right. The first element that can no longer be fused into another element is something. All right. So here, of course, I'm also paying attention to content. So I'm realizing that this passage is going to be about stars, the creation of stars, the death of stars, what's needed in this process, what results from this process. So all of that information is now becoming clearer as I'm reading these questions. Okay. All right, so multiple choice. This one's a bit tricky. Careful. Don't read all the choices. That's easy to not do in the computer-based exam because it's drop down often. So here we go. You just read the sentence at the top. So the sun will not become a type 1a supernova. Why not? Okay. The Chandrasekhar limit is, all right, if two type 1a supernovae are observed and one is brighter than the other, what can be concluded about the dimmer one? Supernovae can be compared to. All right, so we've read those. We have a bit more clarity on this passage now. Now we start reading. And before we begin reading, I have a question. With this type of passage where we're reading about science, we're reading about astronomy, it could be a bit of a challenging read. What's a really important strategy to remember before I begin reading? So what should I remember to do in this case? So there's definitely a really important strategy. There's three big strategies that are absolutely necessary for the IELTS exam. They are critical thinking, paraphrasing, and very good, Sammy. So Sammy says visualize. And David, that's a good suggestion too. So David Eigerman says, don't stop if you find an unknown word. Yeah, so it's likely that you're going to read some new words. Even if you're a native speaker, there's probably going to be some words that you might not know in a passage like this, so don't stop. But most importantly, visualize. And Janelle says, include yourself. So imagine that you are an astronaut or you are an astronomer and you are looking at the stars, or you are traveling through the galaxy learning about stars, okay? Visualization is very important here so that you stay focused on the information and that you keep a catalog, like an order of the information. So what you're doing first, what you're doing next. Like maybe first you're in a spaceship and you're traveling past a star that is just being born. Then later you're traveling next to a star that's starting to die. So it's really important to imagine yourself as a part of this journey through space and the stars, okay? All right, so with that in mind, let's start reading. So members, imagine that you are an astronaut traveling through space, exploring the stars, okay? So again, this is reading, so make sure to read with me. Here we go. Supernovae are among the most spectacular events in the universe. They are incredibly powerful. In just a few weeks, they can release the same amount of energy as our sun will release in its entire lifetime. Supernovae are also the origin of many of the elements that make up the universe. Most of the elements of the periodic table require enormous amounts of energy to produce, and supernovae are the only source of this energy. Due to their consistent brightness, supernovae are used to measure large distances across the universe. Okay, so here I recognize that this is an essay. So this is the introductory paragraph for this essay. Of course, this introductory paragraph introduces the idea of supernovae. and explains why supernovae are important, because they are the source of most of the elements, such as gold and iron and many, many other elements on the table of elements. If you've studied chemistry a bit in middle school and high school, you know what it's referring to. Okay? So they produce enormous amounts of energy, and they have a consistent brightness. Okay, so that's what we will read about. All right, let's keep going. So, of course, now this is body paragraph 1. There are two major types of supernovae, type 1a and type 2. There are a number of differences between the two, but the main difference is the process by which they come into being. Type 2 supernovae originate from a dying star. A star begins to die when it runs out of fuel. Fuel for stars is the element hydrogen. For their entire lives, stars fuse hydrogen into helium, producing energy in the process. This energy comes from the difference in mass between a helium molecule and the 4 constituent hydrogen atoms. 4 hydrogen atoms have a mass of approximately 4.0318 atomic mass units, while a helium atom's mass is approximately 4.0026 atomic mass units. The difference between these two values is the amount of mass which is converted into pure energy. In a dying star, there is no more hydrogen. All that is left is helium. At that point, the star begins to fuse helium molecules together to form carbon molecules. Once all the carbon is gone, the star moves on to even heavier elements, and the star consumes these heavier elements at faster and faster rates. A star may take 10 million years to consume its hydrogen, then take 1,000,000 years to consume its helium, 1,000 years for the carbon, 3 years to consume the neon, 3 months for the oxygen, and only 5 days to convert all of the silicon into iron. There is a stopping point, however. Once the core of the star is entirely iron, there can be no more fusion. This is because the small difference in mass that is converted into energy is not present in the case of iron. The star is then left with an inactive iron core. Once the iron core reaches a certain mass called the Chandrasekhar limit, the star can no longer exist under its own weight, and it collapses in on itself. The result is a cataclysmic type 2 supernova. Okay, so that is a nice long body paragraph. And this body paragraph, what is it talking about? So when you are thinking about your reading section, you have to be able to summarize body paragraphs into, and the introduction and conclusion, into concise, clear points. So if I think about this, okay, as an example, so paragraph B, visually, okay, I imagine looking at 2 types of supernovae, and I see these stars dying, becoming smaller and heavier as they consume different elements. So I'm an astronaut, I'm looking out of my spaceship window, and I'm looking at these stars and I see them dying, okay? So that's what I see here. I imagine looking at two types of supernovae eventually when they explode, and I see some stars dying, becoming smaller and heavier as they consume different elements like hydrogen and neon, okay? So you should be able to summarize that, and this is about the speed that you should be reading. All right, so let's keep going with this. Again, continue to imagine that you're this astronaut and visualize the information so that you can summarize it, okay? Kashirsha says it's about the creation of type 2 supernova. Okay. Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, so it's specifically about how type 2 supernovae come into being. All right, the other type of supernova is the type 1a. Type 1a supernova are formed most commonly in binary star systems, where there are two stars which rotate around a common point. For a supernova type 1a to occur, one of the stars has to be a white dwarf. A white dwarf is the remnant of a low-mass star that has come to the end of its stellar life. Our sun will one day be a white dwarf because it lacks the mass needed to blow up in a supernova type 2 explosion. In a binary system, the white dwarf star gravitationally attracts matter from its companion star, with the matter taken from the companion star becoming part of the white dwarf. Eventually, the white dwarf will have added so much mass that it begins to approach the Chandrasekhar limit. Once it hits this limit, just like in type 2 explosions, the white dwarf can no longer sustain itself, and the core of the star collapses. The star blows itself up in an even more spectacular event than the type 2 explosion. So it's almost like imagining fireworks out in the great universe, right? So the first body paragraph was about type 2 supernovae. This is now about the type 1a. Okay, so again, you should visually see this. So you should visually see the two stars that are spinning around and around a common point. Okay, and one of these stars is a white dwarf, so it's sucking the particles from the other star. Now, so for many of the students watching, there's about 125 of us in the class right now, you're probably thinking, this is crazy. There's no way IELTS can be this difficult. The topics in IELTS reading for the academic are very, very similar to this for Passage 3. And anybody who has taken the academic version of the IELTS exam will know this. So you'll know, oh yeah, that's kind of like the passage I saw in my academic IELTS exam. So you have to be able to read this level of English and answer questions on it to get those higher band scores for sure. Okay. All right. So we've talked about the introduction of supernovae for the beginning. We read a little bit about what type 2 and then type 1a are, what's required for them. Okay. Now let's continue reading a little bit. Yeah, so Janil agrees. Janil says, yeah, at least one of the passages is going to be about the same difficulty for sure. Okay. All right. D. So type 1a supernovae are extremely bright. If the sun were to be replaced by a type 1a supernova, it would appear 5 billion times brighter. This brightness is also very consistent from one supernova type 1a to another supernova type 1a. This consistency has led astronomers to use supernova type 1a as what are called standard candles. A standard candle is used to determine how far away an object is. For example, if we observe a supernova type 1a in a nearby galaxy, we can tell very accurately how far away it is by comparing the apparent brightness of the supernova observed with its absolute brightness. Respectively, if the supernova is very bright, the galaxy is quite close. If the supernova is very dim, the galaxy is very far away. Okay, so here, type 1a supernova as measuring sticks. So as a tool used for measurement, like centimeter, meter, kilometer, because they have an absolute brightness, and this measurement is called a standard candle. All right, so you can even visualize like a little candle that you're measuring the distance with. Okay. Let's keep going. Quite an interesting read as well. And you should always think about the topics in IELTS as interesting. That way your brain will hold the information much, much better. Okay. So Janelle says it's a light year. I'm not sure exactly what a light year is, Janelle. It could be related to standard candles. I don't know enough about astronomy, but you have to be careful not to assume that if it's not mentioned in the passage. Okay. Sammy says it's about the type 1a brightness and levels. Yeah, so Sammy, here it's not so much about levels because there's really only one level of brightness for the type 1a supernova. Okay. All right, so here we go. E, supernovae are responsible for every element in the universe that is heavier than iron. Every atom of gold, silver, tin, and lead, as well as 80 other elements in the universe, was born in a supernova. Supernovae are also the origin of most newly born stars in the universe. Our sun, for example, was born from a cloud of dust and gas that was left over from a supernova. The Earth, likewise, was born from a supernova. It is not too imaginative, therefore, to regard the plants, animals, and humans on this planet as a development of this supernova. Every atom of our bodies was once scattered in a supernova explosion. Therefore, many scientists believe supernovae are the crucibles of existence itself. All right? So this is the conclusion, and here the conclusion is basically saying that, hey, basically what we see in the universe, such as planets, and such as our own solar system, the sun, the earth, the other planets, all come from a supernova of the past. Okay? All right. And of course, these heavy elements like gold, silver, and so forth. Okay. Which is not too bad because sometimes you have a few more. So you can often see up to 7 paragraphs in these IELTS passages. So you can have paragraph F and G as well. So here we have 5. This is very important. You may use any letter more than once. So here we have to match the information to the correct paragraph. All right, so let's take a look at this then. Number 27 is mass energy conversion. So changing or altering great amounts of energy. Which paragraph describes in detail the change or the process of change of great amounts of energy? Kashirsha says it's C. I'm not sure about that. Think. Okay. Janelle says it's B. Yeah, so Janelle says it's B because I think Janelle is thinking about and same with Gus, is thinking about the description of the way supernovae consume hydrogen and change it to helium. So David Eigerman explains that it's about the fusion reaction, maybe B. Yeah. Don't overthink it. So here the key word is conversion. Conversion means to change. Okay? And if you focus on this word change, you remember that, there we go, a little bit too excited, that it's paragraph B that really talks about changing hydrogen into helium, and the difference in mass between the helium molecule. And then it talks more about changing the helium into other types of elements such as carbon, and then carbon into neon, so helium, okay, and iron eventually. So that's the mass energy conversion, absolutely. Okay, and be confident and then move on. Now, again, keep in mind what I've said several times before when doing the reading. You should not be searching for every single answer, okay? So number 29, supernovae as intergalactic measuring sticks. That one should be quite quick. So this one, the standard candles, okay? Again, when you only have 5 paragraphs, you should not have to look at the reading to answer this. So supernovae as intergalactic measuring sticks. Which one is that? Which one is that? Which paragraph talks about that? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Janelle says we missed number 28. Yeah, be really careful not to miss questions in the exam as well. Okay, double check. All right, 28, the requirements for a type 1a supernova. That should be pretty quick as well. Okay. And David says, but whatever, this one is definitely D. Okay, good, David. Yeah, Kashirsha says C for the requirements of a type 1a supernova. Yeah, the requirements being the 2 stars, right? It's a binary star system. So again, so that's B, C, and D. Very good. Okay. And heavy elements come from supernovae, number 30. So heavy elements come from supernovae. This one again, so once you've done a good reading here, then you will be able to answer most of these without having to search for them, okay? Preeti says that was E, and Nico agrees. Rashika agrees as well. Yeah, so that was the gold and those heavier elements. That was during the conclusion, okay? All right, number 31, the fuel used for stars. So basically the source energy that's used to power the star, okay? So number 31, what was that? Okay, and I like the way David is answering the questions where he puts the number, especially when we're going nice and quick. So 30 is the last paragraph E, and you're right, David. Absolutely. 31, fuel used for stars. Sammy says C. David says for 31, it's going to be the paragraph that talks about hydrogen. And that one is B, right? So Preeti remembers that that's B. That's the same as the mass energy conversion, right? Because that's the one that's talking about how hydrogen is converted into helium, okay? So B, C, D, E, and B. And you can do that again because it says any letter more than once, okay? All right, number 32, supernovae are the progenitors of much of existence. So supernovae are kind of the source of much of life on Earth, the sun, the planets, and much of what we see in the universe. So supernovae are the progenitors of much of existence. David says the last one is E again. Yeah, so that's that same paragraph, right? It says heavier elements and Most of what we see in our universe probably come from supernovae. Very good. All right. So I'm sure you can see, members, that when you read this passage clearly, this becomes a lot easier to do, right? Okay, let's keep going. So here, we fill in the blanks, choose no more than 2 words from the passage for each answer. Again, for this type of question, you don't necessarily have to search the passage again and again. A lot of it can be solved by good logic and thinking about what you read. So number 33, type 2 supernovae originate from a star which is something. So this is coming from paragraph B. I could search for it. Okay. So type 2 supernovae originate from a star which is what? How would you finish that? Okay. Preeti says dying star. Okay. Kashirsha says which is dead. Okay. Yeah, I would go with dying. Okay. Progressive form, which is dying, because of the is. It's the be verb here, so which is dying. Okay. It's not quite dead yet. So it's a nice try, Kashirsha, but it's not quite dead yet. I think we would call the star completely dead after the supernova event, when it's kind of like a scattered dust of particles, which is, I believe, called a nebula. It becomes a nebula. Okay, then it's a nebula is a dead star. Okay, a supernova is a dying star. All right, number 34. The energy producing process in a star converts something into something. So this is going back to that paragraph B, the energy producing process in a star. I remember that it was hydrogen. So that was the fuel. And then into helium. But let's say I can't remember the spelling of that. I know it's coming from paragraph B. So I can check that. Okay. And I remember it was somewhere here. So in a dying star, there's that dying. There's no more hydrogen. All that is left is helium. So I check the spelling of these words as well if I'm in the paper-based exam. Make sure that I'm not getting these wrong or typing these wrong in the computer-based exam. Okay. And notice how when I read the entire passage and I know the organization of the information, that's going to make answering the other questions much, much faster. Okay? So hydrogen into helium. Okay? All right, the death process starts when all of the hydrogen is used up. The star then begins to process what? So all of the hydrogen is gone. After the hydrogen is gone, the star begins to process the heavier elements. I remember heavier elements like carbon and neon. If you write heavy elements, you have to be careful with that. Heavy elements are usually like gold and silver, so I would write heavier as a relative. Okay, they might give it you the mark for heavy elements, but I think heavier elements is more accurate. Okay. All right. let's keep moving along. The first element that can no longer be fused into another element is what? So what's the first element that can no longer be fused into another element? Very good, David. Yeah, that was iron, right? The iron core. Excellent. Okay, great. So once it's all iron, it's the beginning of the end. Okay, so now we get to these multiple choice questions. With multiple choice questions, the trick is to think about the answer on your own. So the sun will not become a type 1a supernova. Why not? Okay, so why will the sun not become a type 1a? Well, here I have to remember paragraph C. And paragraph C explains what is needed for type 1a supernova. So what was that? And then I know why it won't become a type 1a. So David says 37 is B. It will never reach the Chandrasekhar limit. Not really, David, because that would be a type 2 supernova. What's needed for a type 1 A supernova? So Rashika says C. It does not have a companion star. Yeah, absolutely. C is the correct answer, because the type 1a supernova from paragraph C, we know that it needs 2 stars. Okay, so there have to be 2 stars that are kind of moving around a common point. Okay, it doesn't have a buddy, David. It doesn't have a friend star. It's lonely. Maybe that's why we're here on Earth, to keep our star sun company. Give it some company. That would be funny if one day people discovered that, well, stars that cannot become supernovae have planets with life around them to keep them entertained. Okay, it's an interesting theory. All right, so number 39, if 2 type 1a supernovae are observed and one is brighter than the other, what can be concluded about the dimmer one? Okay, so you have to visualize here. So you have 2 supernovae, type 1a, okay? And you have one that's quite bright, and you have one that's a little bit dimmer. So the question is, what can we say about the dimmer explosion, the dimmer supernovae? Kashirsa says B, it's further away. Yeah, because their relative brightness is the same. That must mean that the dimmer one is going to be further away. Okay? Again, so B is correct, and it's very, very visual, right? Okay? All right. And David says, we skipped number 38. Well, let's take a look. Yeah, let's not skip that one. All right. Somebody's keeping me on my toes today. That's great. All right. The Chandrasekhar limit is, and if you are from India, it's good to know this because it's a very famous threshold or limit that was discovered by an Indian mathematician, Chandrasekhar, and he's very, very well recognized for this discovery. So the Chandrasekhar limit is, and you should remember this from the reading because I think it was quite unique and interesting. It's basically the point at which the star can no longer hold its own weight. So it's become so heavy and dense that it just goes, it's too much, kaboom, right? So the mass at which a star will blow up in a supernova, yeah, that looks right. Okay, so it's A. And I'm sure there's a beautiful mathematical formula for that. In fact, I'm curious. I might just check it out after class what that actually is. Be interested in your reading. Okay, so when you're preparing for the IELTS exam, learn on a variety of different topics and be interested in what you read. Okay. All right, last question. Number 40, supernovae can be compared to A, the universe's factory, B, the universe's graveyard, C, the universe's hospital, D, the universe's recycling center. So based on all of the information that we read, this is an interesting question because you have to infer the answer from all of the information that we read. So number 40 is universe's factory, graveyard, or recycling center. So many of you are saying universe's factory. I think a better answer is it's kind of the universe's recycling center. So I would actually go with D here. The reason why is because these supernovae, they don't just produce a lot of what we see in the universe, but they also consume it, right? So Nico says D. I would say D as well because when I visualize this, and this is where visualization is very important. So you have this star, right? The star is, first of all, sucking up. It's all in the process of the supernovae, right? So first of all, it's sucking up and converting energy. So it's taking the hydrogen and then it's making these other particles. Then eventually it explodes. And then those particles become planets and stars again. And then eventually it explodes again. So it's kind of like constructing, deconstructing, constructing, deconstructing. And that's kind of what a recycling center does. So D, I think, is better of an answer than factory. Okay. All right. That is the reading for today. Key points from today's lesson: visualize. Okay. See the information. Think critically. Don't go back and look for all the answers. Use your knowledge of the information to answer most of the questions, okay? And for lots more reading and reading practice, you can visit our websites. We've got lots and lots of great material for you there. Our websites, again, they look like this. So this is our academic IELTS website here with the blue background. You can click that big red button to join our premium package. It is a one-time payment for lifetime access, and you get 6 full practice exams. We're actually working on releasing another 4. I will be back in 30 minutes or so with a brand new task 2 essay question. So make sure to hang around for that. Okay. Again, aehelp.com, glshelp.com. Check us out there. And yeah, there's no half marks, David, on the IELTS, that's for sure. All right, everyone. So I'll see you shortly. I'm Adrian. I'm signing out for now, but I'll be back soon. Bye.